You heard about the United States taking this abstention at the United Nations on a vote involving Israel. Now, I want to put this into context. 3 times before, the U.S. voted against this kind of resolution on Israel, calling for a ceasefire that doesn't condemn Hamas, nor does it require or even ask Hamas to turn and to give over the hostages that still remain, which is estimated around 100. Yeah, some of those are alive. Some might be bodies, but it's still a very large number. And that was excluded from the language. So the U.S., the last 3 times, voted against this. And it didn't pass. But this time at the United Nations, the United States decided we'll go along with the language that doesn't include the hostages being released, that doesn't condemn Hamas and their acts of terrorism on October 7th that led to the conflict that is still ongoing. And by doing so, this resolution moves forward. Now, a resolution from the Security Council is a step in the wrong direction against Israel. But what we're most concerned about, and why we're watching it very carefully through our team, both at ACLJ Jerusalem, our international team, our NGO status at the UN, is that the United States making these moves politically over time, especially when it comes to the Biden administration and the left. And we can play for you because Karine Jean-Pierre was asked directly about it. It sounds like you're playing politics with this because you've now changed your policy, based on 18 to 29-year-olds who are protesting at their college campuses? Take a listen.
This is not about politics. It's not. The president does not lead his national security or things that are the right thing to do in this sense, right? Getting that hostage deal, making sure hostages come home, including, as I said, over and over again, American hostages, getting that humanitarian aid into Gaza and making sure that we believe that would lead to a ceasefire. That is not about politics. That is about the right thing to do.
Logan, the language doesn't include getting the hostages out, and it doesn't include Hamas, no condemnation of Hamas. All it does is say, if they get humanitarian aid in, maybe then Hamas will do something good. And we've seen time over time, they've gotten humanitarian aid in this entire time, and they sell it or steal it.
Yeah, we know where it's actually going. That's been the concern the entire time. And sure, I mean, maybe there's part of them going, you know what, we're not going to be able to get them to free the hostages, so whatever, throw in the towel. But it's sad when this is the place we got to in America, where you're able to say, okay, let's take out all the rough language. What was the rough language? Getting hostages out. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, this is a clear move by the Biden administration. Looking at their poll numbers, which are not good in younger voters, where they typically, the left relies on. It's not just the college vote either, Logan, that we're talking about. We're talking. A lot of people say 18 to 29. I'd say it's more like 18 to 40, 18 to 39, really. And we've seen a shift in
I would even say
the Christian community. We've seen a shift amongst definitely on college campuses, getting more radical in support of and anti-Israel, but in support of Palestinian causes, regardless of the brutality of the attack on October 7th. It didn't take long for everybody to just forget October 7th and just focus on the fact that Israel's response, as if they're just attacking Gaza for no reason.
For no reason. And I think you're right in that age demographic. I think it maybe even skews a little older, where you have people that are in college now, like I said, maybe up through adults. If you're on the left, essentially, you have to be. This is your talking point.
You've become anti-Israel.
That's your part of your platform now.
This response from the United States and the Biden administration, what I'm concerned about is that by the time we get to election, they're going to be not just abstaining on votes, but they're going to be like voting against Israel at the United Nations. So they've already gone from voting against these bad resolutions for Israel. So that was good. But they've moved from that to abstaining. And then the likely next move is that you are so upset by if Israel continues this, what I believe is justified war against Hamas until they deliver those hostages and cease their attacks on Israel, that eventually, if they don't do this resolution, are you going to actually go and vote yes to start actually condemning Israel? Are you going to join those countries at the United Nations? Is the U.S. going to join in that? I mean, it's the likely next step if this administration certainly gets another 4 years in the White House. The entire reason Israel is still engaged in this conflict, which, yes, is, of course, is endangering the lives of Palestinians in Gaza because of what happened October 7th, they have to respond as a sovereign nation, and they still haven't got all of their hostages back. If Hamas wanted most of this conflict to come to a close, they would get those 100 hostages, whether some are bodies and some are alive, to Israel. And guess what? Palestinian citizens would probably not be facing any more of these air raids, at least for a period of time, if Hamas also stopped firing at Israel. That's all they have to do. But they're unwilling to do that, and they've got the UN backing them, saying they can keep hostages, they can keep firing on Israel, but Israel's got to stop. And the U.S. has voted no on that resolution 3 times because of that. It makes no sense. This vote, they just abstained, which means it moved forward. So they're very close to making a vote that is actually anti-Israel at the United Nations, going a step further than the Obama-Biden administration. And they're right, especially I think if you give them another 4 years. And it's because of people like AOC. Even though there's only 5 or 6 of these members of Congress that are in Congress, Logan, elected, this is the base of the Democrat Party right now. They all are echoing her message. Take a listen to her last week on the House floor. Bite one.
If you want to know what an unfolding genocide looks like, open your eyes. It looks like the forced famine of 1.1 million innocents. We must write our story in this moment of what it means and who we are as Americans. And our story must be not that we were good men who did nothing.
You know, first of all, the genocide, or what she's tried to determine as a genocide, the 1 million people she's talking about are not all innocents. They decided to elect a terror group years ago. They've decided to allow that terror group to be part of their families. I mean, I think within families in the Gaza Strip, maybe there's connections within all of them to Hamas. They did that with doctors. They did that with the UN Refugee and Relief Agency, and it was like 1 out of every 10 employees was working for Hamas. One out of 90% of employees had a family member as part of Hamas. So she says 1.1 million innocents. These are all people who are celebrating what happened on October 7th. And Logan, you don't get to go into a sovereign country, rape, murder, and kill, take hostages, and expect a sovereign country like Israel not to respond, and that response to be pretty darn harsh.
And I want to say, there's a reason we're still actively working. I read all the comments, or as many as I can. They go by fast with thousands of you watch. And there are some people like, well, I'm waiting to know if I'm voting for Trump. It's like, we have to be proactively working right now. Number one, of course, it's no guarantee President Trump wins. You got to keep going. Number two, the work can't stop because this is people's lives on the lines.
Oh, yeah. A lot of horrible things to Israel could happen between now and January.
At best case scenario. That's
best case scenario is the U.S. stays, maybe just abstains, but that means these resolutions are going to start moving forward. And Security Council resolutions aren't like General Assembly resolutions. I mean, at some point, you could have. You could envision they throw in peacekeepers. They've done it before. They did in Lebanon. And you know what those peacekeepers do? They help Hezbollah target Israelis.
Yeah, and you may not, and the U.S. may have a better point of view.
I did a whole thing in law in my LLM degree in Georgetown on how the peacekeepers between Israel and Hezbollah on the Lebanese border during one of their last conflicts were literally pointing out for Hezbollah the Israel locations so that Hezbollah could target and kill those Israeli troops.
Our executive producer, Will, brought up a good point, which is also, if Trump is to win, then you have a couple months there where it could be an all-out war from the United States on Israel, where they just pull out all the stops, where the Democrats pull out all the stops, knowing that the Trump administration is on the way. So it could actually get somewhat more dangerous for Israel for a short term.
You see the shift in 4 years, a shift when Israel was making peace deals with Gulf state after Gulf state through the Abraham Accords. And the Biden administration came in and they said, let's throw this out the window. Let's get this back to conflict. And that's exactly what's happened.